Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Orange Card, Blue Card. It's been a hot minute. My normal partner, David Toombs, has been on hiatus from content, so figured I'd bring back some of the winners interview content, and I've got my good friend, Denver's champion, and the first day two qualifier for Worlds, Andrew Porat. Andrew, how are you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good, Sam. Thanks for having me.
So you just won Denver with the first event into Critical Role Heroes of Exandria. Let's talk a little bit about the lead up to the event, maybe preview season through Critical Role. What were things that you were most excited about knowing that you had the Denver regional coming out pretty shortly after Heroes of Exandria's release?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious how you do this, Sam, but for me, like I was just focused on the Worlds format. And so I didn't even look at any of the Critical Role cards until after Worlds, right? So I didn't really know, like I'm curious if how like were you looking at all the cards immediately when they came out, like pretty seriously, or were you just like, oh, there's new cards out?
Well, yeah, so it's pretty tough. I wasn't playing at Worlds, so the Worlds
True.
format didn't really mean anything to me.
True.
But I also have to see all the cards together because, like, if you see a card like Sweeping Daggers and you're like, whoa, that card's super good. But then there's a card later on in the set that, like, hates you for removing cards from my discard pile or denies it or something like that. Like there's multiple staples, right, that could come through. Like I hate seeing a card like Grovekeeper's Authority before I see what the party backups are, before I see what they do. Because build all your party backups sounds tight. If all the party backups are like bad cards, it's not tight anymore. So I always wait till the very, very end of the preview season. And so there was kind of like a 2 to 3 week period where I was hard cooking with Critical Role basically in preparation for Denver, which of course
Mm.
it didn't come to fruition. But yeah, I waited till like well after Worlds to really take a look.
Okay. So yeah, like my process was very simple. I pulled up UVS Ultra, I looked at every card and I just looked at which are what I thought the best cards. And I thought Sweeping Daggers was the best card in the set. And I
Yeah.
thought Nonagon was really good too. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna play a Void deck. Yeah.
Yeah, Nonagon was a big pickup for sure. I it was pretty easy for me. I thought Violent Animus Shot was like way better than people were talking about. No one was really discussing it, and I
Do
knew
you,
that
do you
card was
still
going to
think
be.
that?
Well,
Do you still think that? It's crazy.
I think it's very good. It might not be like the best attack in any deck, but it is so frustrating to deal with. It's incredibly frustrating as the second high attack of a turn before the third high attack of a turn.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredibly, incredibly good once you get like zone changing with vertical maneuvering equipment going, punishing your opponent for like not overloading the correct zone is super strong. Punishing decks that don't want to block and want to sculpt for next turn, like Grog, is really good at just taking hits. He'll
Mm.
draw those cards, and he has like a better review step, a better sculpt. This attack punishes him for doing that. Um,
They really don't want you to play backups, huh? It's like
they really do, but they also are smart enough to make sure that there's stuff to keep backups in check. I will say, I struggled to beat a Caduceus deck because it would put out more backups than I could kill,
mm,
even with 4 copies of Animus Shot. And it got to the point where it was like I just have to attack the backups, have enough momentum, and still somehow fight through or bait out the defensive abilities from the deck, so I could play one big powerful move with all that momentum, and
I
I
see.
would risk having all my attacks trapped in momentum. So it was pretty difficult to play against a backup deck, even with Animus Shot.
I see. Yeah, I mean on Enemy Shot, I it's just a filler card for me. Like I'm not super excited about it. It's just like there's only so many really good attacks, right?
It's
Like
it's a low block
yeah,
breaker in a deck that wants
exactly. It's a
to.
4 diff that does something and it
Yeah.
has a breaker 1 low. Like it's a really nice round out the deck card. But
Well, and I,
yeah, it feels good against what you were saying. The characters that don't like blocking, like yeah, it feels really good there. So
Yeah, and like when you're playing against the Beast Titan attacks, the Monkey Flip decks, where they want to use
mm,
Duplicitous to build a backup, and that backup picks up an attack, and Smiling Titan picks up an attack that picks up an attack that picks, and they like start
yeah,
looping
yeah.
these backups anyways. I felt like it was a great natural progression to that. I love it when there's a really strong strategy, and then in the very next set, there is something that doesn't like diffuse the strategy completely, but plays well into it. And we saw like Hanji was still fine. I think it was what Caden is his name. I'm terrible at names, so I think
Yeah, yeah,
Caden G played like a sick Hanji deck. So like the deck didn't die because Anima Shot existed, right? But Anima Shot is good into that deck. So I love seeing stuff like that that makes you think that they really are paying attention to what they're designing and designing in the future
You
ahead.
know, a
But
card's kind of crazy that I didn't see a lot of is that card that says response. Pick the keywords of a card in your discard pile. I'm shocked people aren't playing that, but
wait, do what with the keywords?
it's like you can like respond and get breaker two on your block, and it's like a one block. It was some of the people who are on Tarian were playing it.
Oh, you're talking
But
about the
like
attack card
one
that
of
copies keywords
yeah,
from your
that
discard
seems
pile?
pretty good to me. Like
It's called Inventor's Creation, and if it
yeah.
was an attuned symbol card, I guarantee you would see it everywhere as like a one or a two of.
Yeah. I
Um,
didn't see much of that card. That card I thought like reading it was like, oh my god, you can just like tutor a breaker block for free on this thing. But I guess yeah, breaker's like gone from the format right now,
I
so
was just about to say, not only is there not a ton of compelling Breaker 2 attacks, most of the Breaker 2 is like on Chomp or Twisty Surroundings or like if you could play that card with Big Fist Bash, I don't think they share a symbol. Maybe Order, but like playing it with Big Fist Bash would be cool because you're increasing the amount of breakers you have, but
Mm.
it's
So it's
off
not on the right
zone.
symbols. It's
Yeah,
not on the right symbols.
you
Yeah.
can't steal deflect with it. Offensively, like maybe if you're playing Patchwork Baby type stuff,
Mm.
but it's one of those things where Sweeping Daggers is stealing all the abilities for the same for a better stat line.
Oh, for
It's
sure.
denying your
Yeah.
opponent something, and then Inventor's Creation is just kind of asking you to only get like half an attack because it's only getting the keywords. So
Yeah. Would you say on daggers, sweeping daggers, would you say it's the most meta warping card since like Kraken, Vast Hybrid Chimera Kraken? Because like I can't remember an attack coming out since then that like literally made you have to think about your deck. Like you had to think about like, oh, if I play like one Cape of No Return as my only asset and I play a
yeah.
Kraken deck, like I'm gonna have a terrible time. Um, I I feel like sweeping daggers, like you got to be like, if you're playing good attacks, you got to have like a strategy around removing them or something, right? Because if not you're gonna get eaten alive.
It's tough because there's only one deck that played Sweeping Daggers in the top 8. I can't look at the top 16, and
Mm.
I would have never thought it was format warping going into the event outside of maybe punishing some very specific decks
Hanji
like
was playing it too, so it was the Rodin and Hanji were playing it.
the Hanji was playing it. Oh, on Death. Okay,
Hanji was
okay.
playing it.
I'm tripping. You're
Yeah,
right. There's two. There's two. You're right. I think of that card as Air Void. I forget it has Death. Uh, which is funny.
of
I
course
was
it
gonna.
has death.
Yeah. Okay. So
Every
there's two in the
broken
top
attack.
4. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But I would have never thought of it as truly format warping outside of maybe punishing some decks that kind of deserve it. Like King Ghidorah is pretty weak to it.
Oh yeah, it's not fair for Ghidorah.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Elder Tagoro's pretty weak to it, but they both deserve it. They both kind of deserve it, in my opinion. Having
Byakko as well, right? Like the whole, I'm
yeah,
gonna play beast summoning thing is just like dead now.
yeah, you
Yeah.
just kind of remove them as you go. So at the same time, my opponent playing a 4 diff 5 mid 4 that like if you remove a beast summoning, it does almost nothing for you. right? Like you don't have beast summonings, you don't want to pay for. So, when I play sweeping daggers, my opponent has bad attacks that at best I'm removing so they can't use it. Like I remove beast titan attacks a lot with that attack, and I go, well, I don't play backups. It's not a throw, it's not 8 damage, but I stopped
Yeah.
you from building it with duplicitous. I stopped you from adding it to your hand later with another beast titan attacks. So it's really strong, but warping sounds. I've not heard anyone personally say I won't play this deck because sweeping daggers exists, except maybe King Ghidorah. And
I've said that about Ghidorah because I wanted to play Evil Ghidorah, and that is not a thing that's going to happen in this format. No
Yeah.
way. I'm not dying to my own true 100%. I'm sorry. I don't have it in me. I don't have the stability for that.
Yeah, so that's like the only character I really heard anyone, you and one other person was like, yeah, Ghidorah is not really my thing. But it's funny we mentioned Ghidorah because who is the most represented character in Denver with sweeping daggers legal?
You got to explain this one to me, Sam. Maybe you know something I don't. What are people thinking, man?
I have no idea. The only thing I can think of is people who didn't have like critical role cards in spades or didn't have like a critical role deck they really liked, knew that Ghidorah was like a safe option.
Yeah.
The decks coming out of, and like decks like Nick Reagan and decks like the one shot Deku are really good at putting like huge numbers on things. So maybe people felt like that was the meta call. But like I played in teams and my King Ghidorah got paired into a Dark Deku one shot Phantom Threat deck and lost. So, they managed to get one shotted 3 times because Deku doesn't have to commit that many foundations. He can do it earlier in the game even. So Ghidorah might have been like the read on paper, but once you get into like the nitty gritty, he just wasn't that good this format.
The thing about Ghidorah, the first time I played him, I thought he was terrible because he feels real bad early game. Like he can turtle a little bit, but man, his offense is like terrible, and I don't know. So I more power to the people who are playing him, but I think you should consider somebody else playing to win.
The stuff that makes Ghidorah really nasty is having multiples of things. It's the fact that
it's once he gets set up, you like can't do anything, right? He's like he's got all the Hiei cards that do stats. He's playing from his discard, like he can't overcommit. It's like he's got a nice stun package too. Like it's pretty good deck like late game, but until late game, I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
The other issue is
who he has like the cool Ghidorah like statue, which I respect, and he's been on Ghidorah for a while. And I was just playing his cards with sweeping daggers, and like I don't know how he could have done anything.
Right.
Like I'm just picking the best ones,
The other thing for Ghidorah right now is everyone is like stacking multiple of the same foundation. Like defense is dominated by how many greater goals do you have. It's dominated by how many incubatings and like ways to activate Science Bros, and like Science Bros itself has made people play cards like Seal of Approval. People are playing cards like the Coronation of Historia Rice. People are playing things that commit and freeze a foundation. Although we haven't seen, which is funny because Vast Hybrid has like disappeared. But I think I think Universe's players are just tired of playing the same shit. People are just tired of playing the same cards over and over, right? But like, there's not an excuse why a Chaos deck with Determined Advance and Fast Hybrid is not like a contender in this format, other than people are just tired of doing it.
Yeah.
Like you play Rodan, it's not the end of the world, but man, Determined Advance turn 2, that fucking hits you, right? Like
you take 6 or 9 if it's Godzilla, and you get the next one.
Yeah, and you're just like, I will block the next one. I will not commit out and walk the dogs for this shit, right? So there's just like no real excuse other than we want new tools to play with, and there's only a top 8, and I'm sure there's plenty of chaos decks in the next 8 through 16, but
Chaos control is also a thing too, like broken psyche, decoy duplicate, like VME, because that momentum is so
right,
free.
because
Like,
that's
yeah,
their
like
thing. Yeah,
that's what I didn't get, that nobody was on Mitch on Chaos. I'm so like convinced this is the deck, but nobody played it.
I think people
Because
are struggling to find kills with Mitch outside of cards that also have order. Like Walk the Dog is how I died to the Mitchell players I played against. But I was playing like a 7-hander that burns myself. So like
sure,
so
yeah,
like they always have one momentum, and they always have like a 10 damage Walk the Dog like loaded ready to go. And Percy like burns himself and commits himself. So like it was a bad matchup.
yeah.
But yeah, Walk the Dog has chaos and order, so they can just play it on order. Patchwork Baby has a million keywords, but I'm with you. I don't understand why like Armor of the Wolf isn't a suitable replacement when you've got other attacks that do the stunning for you. Stun 3 duplicate deception, or was it deception dagger?
Yeah,
It
Deception Dagger seems pretty broken, if you ask
yeah.
me.
Yeah, Deception Dagger hit me with like the stun 3 when you first play it. If you flip one from momentum, this attack is probably like stun 5 now. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So
Chaos is not dead, man. Chaos is still alive. People just, I guess, they don't want to play it, which is fine. I'm happy to hear that, because that Chaos is crazy.
it didn't do
It's
that good.
expensive though. It's expensive to play that deck. You better have it already.
Yeah, it didn't do that good at Worlds either, which probably like shied people off of it. But it went from being like the boogeyman symbol to everyone either not wanting to play it or just hard teching against it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the Ghidorah players I know, like I talked to 2 people who played Ghidorah at the event, and they were like, I just couldn't find a Critical Role deck I liked, and I owned all the cards for Ghidorah. That's it. It was just that simple of like, I'm going to run it back with Ghidorah. It did well for me at the last event I played it at. Brian Garza played it at Worlds, and it won him like the LCQ or whatever. Like it got him into Worlds, and he just didn't find a different deck. So like that's a big part of it. People like, for me, the decision to switch to Grog last minute was like 75% I just want to play a Critical Role character, and 25% I don't want to try that hard. Like I want to play an easy deck. So I was like, I want to play Critical Role. I like the Critical Role stuff. Let me play a Critical Role character. And also Grog is like kind of brain dead easy. So
I thought Grog was good, by the way. Like I was expecting Grogs to rise up,
yeah.
and I don't know what happened to Grog Nation, but they didn't show up, or they couldn't get their deck list on time. I don't know what the issue was, but yeah, I didn't want to play against Grog. That character's crazy. I don't know. Like, weird to me that Grog didn't do well in this event.
Yeah, I don't know how many people signed up Grog, how many people played Grog.
But
We
that was the
obviously saw it
critical
do
role
well at the Ace
character,
Arena.
right? Like, why didn't people play that? Because that was the critical role character to play.
Yeah.
I thought, at least, right? Like, I feel like that was the freebie. Like, there's always a push character in the set, right? That was the push character in the set.
He's like the
And
easiest, at least. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like,
It
younger Tagoro was pushed in Yu Yu Hakusho. I mean, Godzilla, everyone was good, but there's always like one or two characters who are kind of like just better. He seemed like he was, but I don't know.
it
I'm never gonna play Grog personally. I just don't like the five Anders,
he
even though
just
he's not a
draws a
five
lot.
Ander.
You don't feel like a 5-hander for very long, I promise.
Yeah, he's the fake. Yeah, yeah. Like I just don't like the idea of playing him. I don't know. It's just like turns me off. Like I want to play the 6-hander or 7-hander, and the 6-handers I don't really like playing either. But you know they're pretty good now. Like they get like 5-hander health now. Like when we started playing, the 5-handers at 30 health, and now the 6-handers have like 30 health, and so it's pretty
It's
good. It's
it
compelling.
it's crazy because they keep giving 5-handers like busted abilities, and in compensation of how good their abilities are, they nerf their health. Like
100%.
like
Yeah,
Nick
yeah, yeah.
Reagan has
So
less health than Godzilla.
it's funny to me that people always just play Godzilla at these
Yeah.
events. Like, he's a cool character. He's honestly a really well designed aggro. Like the ability to blow up the board is awesome. I got a lot of respect for the Godzilla players out there. I want somebody to figure it out because I haven't. Like I looked at Godzilla. I don't know how you like are able to round out the list, right? But it's a cool deck. I know
Well,
you played Godzilla, right? A few
I did
times.
I did play Godzilla.
Yeah.
I got
You must have some spice in there.
I mostly borrowed from Tim Keefe's list and then added
Mm.
zero diffs to it. Because I still think that like building 5 turn 1 is pretty good, even if you're like trying to generate momentum and get check bonuses. I think the biggest spice that I got from Tim Keefe that I don't know if other people were doing was Blue Flame Torment, the low attack.
Mm.
The one where it's like they have to check a 6. But then I played against Bill Evans' Godzilla deck where it like only checks 6s and I felt so stupid. And then I played
Yeah.
against Mimic who wants to check a 5 and commit an asset and like reduce damage, and I felt so stupid. And then he checks an asset and he picks up an attack and I felt really stupid. So I don't know if that's actually the sauce, but it felt good against like any other deck.
It's kind of funny also that City Rampage got like power crept because everyone like a month ago was like complaining I was too. Like I don't like that card, but now it got power crept. It's like
Yeah.
now we just got, the characters doing better things than City Rampage, and you don't need to waste a slot on it, which is just silly to think.
I think that's kind of how it always was. It was just the kind of thing where City Rampage allowed you to play the attack lineup everyone always wants to play. Everybody, at least I look at decks in like my initial list, my rough draft is like a schmillion 5 diffs because they all do good things, right? They all have the good text, and you have to play 4 diffs that have good stats, and the ones that draw a card have like the best text. And so City Rampage was just the one that said, all right, you can play the 5 diffs that draw cards and like not be punished for it. It made it
All right,
very
I got a
easy.
question for you, Sam. I got a question.
Yeah.
Lethal Slash, is it good or is it meh?
I think it's good, but I don't think it's great. I think Lethal Slash is exactly what a 2-check is supposed to be. It looks amazing when you play it and everything's going right and you have synergy for it. Like the Mirko decks, if you block the first attack and then they hit you with Lethal Slash, they can clear both attacks and go back to an empty card pool the same way Pony was doing it. But I won a lot of games against Ponies and Mirkos because they check the 2. And the 2-check is the decider whether you play it or check it, and I think that that's fine because people are willing to play it still. And like a 5-2 is a hard ask, and a 4-2 is just not that big of an ask. So
yeah, I feel like I watched Wub like lose a game because he played a 3-diff turn 1 going first and checked Lethal Slash in his like round 7, and that's how he beat Travis, I believe, when they played. And it's like, when you think of it that way, it's like fair, but those guys also both made like top 8. And so even losing like one game out of like, the 16 or 20 you play is not that big of a cost. So like, if you think about it, like it's not really that big of a deal. Yeah.
On the flip side, now I wasn't there, so I don't know. I was in the lobby just kind of chilling, waiting for like the first round to end. And like through the first 2 rounds, I was just chilling out there, and my local Luis came up and was like, "That's it, bro. I'm done with the game. I'm going home." And he was like ready to sell out because he kept checking it too. And every time people ask me about Lethal Slash, about any 2-check, and he like I've had this exact conversation with him. They're like, "Hey man, what do you think about this card? Why aren't people playing this card? Isn't this card nuts?" And I have the exact same response I've had like since Specialized Soundwaves was a card, which is some people don't want to risk checking the 2. It's that simple. And like the response is always just don't check it. Don't be a pussy. We just won't check it. We'll just be God gamers. And then
Side note, I got to roast Luis for a second because I was just like hanging out and dude went up to me like he was selling a watch. He was like, "Hey, excuse me, sir, are you interested in buying any cardboard today?"
Yeah, he was selling out because he
What are you
checked the 2.
doing?
Yeah, he's
You
slipping
trying to tell
Jimmy
me
on
like
you.
the Golden Gate Bridge or something? Like, what is this? Like,
Yeah,
it
so
was funny.
yeah. Well, that was him like Sunday because which is funny because he was like all ready to sell out. He sold a bunch of like SRs and URs and stuff. And then the next time I see him, he's sitting there drafting Yu Yu Hakusho Retro. And he's like, yo, this booster box is sick. All these cards are awesome. We should just draft retro cards. So no one really
Wasn't
quits.
he the guy with the tier list in David's Discord? That
I wouldn't
he
be
had that.
surprised.
Like, I'm pretty sure he posted like a tier list in the Discord that had like I forget what character as like S tier or something, and everyone
Mirko?
was giving him. No, it wasn't Mirko. It was one of the
No.
new. It was the one that like gives an attack echo from the new set.
Oh,
It was,
Essek? Yeah.
yeah.
He's high on
Everyone
Essek.
was
Hey,
like,
when Essek plays 3 lightning blasts turn 2 at you, it's pretty strong.
hey, yeah.
You know,
But
the whole
anyways, enough. Luis, you're a
yeah,
good
the old
dude.
4 low for 11. Well, I'm just saying like he's my reference for like player who said, "Hey, why don't we just play Lethal Slash? That'll trash people." And I said, "Yeah, but doesn't your deck revolve around building a 3 diff
Three
turn
diff.
1?" And he was like, "It's cool. We just won't check it." And then you like cut to
Right.
like the 2 hours later SpongeBob meme and we're standing there in the lobby and he's like, "I checked it." You know? And like
Like
he
I'm
just
selling out.
yeah, and he was just like, "Oh man, I can't afford to suck at this game. I'm just done." And then he spent his money that he got from selling cards on retro cards, so he's back in. Like, I don't know what's
It
happening.
does baffle the mind that Crow and Frog got hit and they still print Crow and Frog with different words and like I'm of the opinion that Crow and Frog must have been hit because it readied the character because here we are with every like we're ignoring progressive in 25 different ways now.
Well,
Like
so Crow and Frog did it every time you played it. Lethal Slash only does its thing. Like it only removes if you play a card in front of it, which has its own. It's not a lot, but it's something. And it's like Spirit Unicorns is like the fairest version because it's only the first copy and it's only for like one keyword type attack. But yeah, the readying characters was also just kind of bonkers. Especially with Petty Squabble, like that was just like, whoa, look at all this value we can generate. But there's always going to be some amount of progressive ignoring now. It's just how it is. It's kind of technically how it's always been. There's always been attacks that leave the card pool, and usually one of them is very playable. My only beef is why the fuck is Lethal Slash not an air card? Why does it remove from the game and become a fire card because it removes from the game? Like, this is what I'm talking about, where people are like, oh, well, Attack on Titan really reinforced symbol identity. It's like, yeah, sometimes, like Air's identity is explicitly clear the card pool. If you have a card leave the card pool in any other way, it's always better than clearing it pretty much. Like, it's crazy. So
yeah.
Yeah, but the Lethal Slash thing is just for all of time. There has been 2 checks that man is afraid to play, and when it goes right, it looks broken and bannable, and when it goes wrong, you want to quit the fucking game because you didn't get to play the game because your dumbass tried to play a 3 diff on turn 1 and you checked the 2. So if you only do that once per tournament, yeah, it's probably not going to ruin your life, but if you do it 2 matches in a row, like you don't want to play the game anymore.
For sure. Yeah.
Luckily, I don't think there's not too many 2 checks to really hem and haw over. Like, they don't print that many.
No.
And most of them are like clearly bad. Most of them are like really just like so this is something that we didn't have before that I think we have now with Attack on Titan is like there are cards that are telling you don't play me. You know what I mean? Like in Magic the Gathering, there's cards that say don't play me. And before Critical Role, like every 2 check just said don't fucking play me
Can
because
you
of
give
the
me an
2.
example just for fun?
Yeah, like Lethal Slash was like the only one that got through. People were like, "Oh my god, well orchestrated attack? That card is
Oh, that
so
one.
insane. You might draw 3 cards. When the fuck have you ever seen that card at an event?" You
Never.
know, we have a 2 check intense heat blast that wants to be discarded from the game. It doesn't want you to play it. What are we fucking doing here? You know,
Yeah.
like Farewell Between Friends got so much hype, but it doesn't do anything by itself. It's a 4 mid 6 on a 2 check. You're gonna look at their hand and go, "Oh shit, you're gonna breaker me. Good job, me." Like, you know, you're gonna say, "Don't play that breaker card," and then like, okay, cool, man. It's a 4 mid 6. Like, you get hit with something else. Like, it's so funny. Like, Farewell Between Friends should be broken, but like the
Yeah.
power level of everything is just like you'd rather just play a better statted attack. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I do like that the power level is like lower in fairness, because I think the power levels of some past sets have been really high. So I kind of like the trend a little better, probably.
Oh,
But
I love the Critical Role balance seems great. Like the 2 checks
yeah,
don't want you to play them, but only because of the other existing broken cards like Walk the Dog. But
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah, you said it really well right there. Like,
like
yeah.
No Mercy Percy, I found out has Echo. I forgot that card has Echo. But like once you echo it, it's amazing. It draws you 2 cards, you know? Spellstorm has a 2 check and wants you to be a mage and play spells only. And like it's good at any point in the game because a 5 diff cantrip or a 5 speed cantrip, you know, it cantrips if it hits, is like quality enough early game. And like it doesn't have to do fucking everything for you. Like I hate these cards that are like do a good thing and then do another good thing when a good thing happens to you. Like it's so weird. It's so weird that cards aren't like spend a resource, get a good thing, you know?
Well, yeah. Another thing that I think is interesting is that draw used to be so scarce that a card like passing the torch was like, dude, felt
Godlike.
really good, right?
Well,
And
I don't think it
now
was a draw.
I associate draw with one diff flip effect.
I
And
don't know. I don't know if draw was scarce so much as passing the torch just allowed you to play a degenerate game plan of play my whole hand.
think about how we were playing Valiant Assault, the 3 mid 4 that just drew, and cards like, it felt like to me that draw was like this incredible. I don't know what happened, but it feels like we're at a point now where like I'm skipping the one diff that says after your opponent uses their character, which is like the freest thing ever, draw a card. Like that one doesn't even see play.
That card was never
And that's
good. Curious about
yeah, I'm
quirks.
just
That
saying,
card was
like,
never good. That was never a playable 1/5 draw.
but it should be, is what I'm saying. Like, it's surprising to me that that's not playable, is what I'm saying. Like, it
Yeah,
feels like I don't know what changed. That's why I'm posing this
yeah.
discussion point of like, when did draw not become good enough to like play on a one diff flip effect? That's essentially like free.
Well, because
Um,
the answer is that there's a different 1 diff draw effect. You just don't have to play
Fair.
them both.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe there's
Curious
just too
about
many. Yeah,
quirks. Yeah, Curious About Quirks was like one of the only other. So, like, Air has like really bad card draw, so it's a great example, right? Air has 3 different 1/5 draw effects, and the only good one is Fearsome Transformation. Well, I guess Push the Advantage is now, but Push the Advantage is still like one of the least played of the 1/5 AOT, like do a thing draw cards. Um, and it's like Air's version
well,
of 1/5 draw card
maybe.
is if your attack speed is below printed, draw a card. Awful. Curious About Quirks. Wait for my opponent to do something, then I get to draw. Awful. They'll just commit it first, you know? Play a kick, it deals damage. Draw a card. Not great. Also commit cause. Have a charge attack in your card pool. 4 check, not a 1/5, not on the list. The big 3. After you played your third attack, draw a card. we're waiting too long to have a face down to commit to play our third attack. So like all of those cards are pretty much dog shit except the one that says after you do the thing you were already gonna do, draw a card. If you have the resource that you already want to have, draw a card. Those are the two playable ones. Everything else is just obsolete power level wise.
Yeah, I feel like we've hit a point though of like you're no longer playing all the draw cards, and I don't know why. Maybe the attacks are just so strong now
Well,
that you don't need that many.
you played all the draw cards because at most you could have in your deck was 8 to 12 copies. Now I can have 46 1/5s, one difficulty cards that draw me a card.
Yeah.
But I'm not fucking playing, 10 of the 12 because I'm playing the same two that we've always played because they're the most easily applicable. That's it. The answer is chivalrous competitor rotated and we just play a different attuned 1/5 draw card, but it's the same one. I think decks have decks have the same amount of card draw that they used to have.
Yeah, that's fair. And one last question: what do you think is the most like powerful defensive ability right now?
Ability overall, character, non-character, whatever.
Just like a more of like, is it this like damage reduction? Is it like runaway hand trap? Is it blocking? Like is it, what do you think is the kind of most powerful way to play defense?
So
Is it VME? Just changing the zone, ignoring the game, and saying I'm just gonna block with whatever I have in my hand.
I think that there's two main answers. And they're kind like VME I think is number 2, which is funny because I don't know where you position the other two because I'm stuck between two others and I can't tell if I'm just being baited by one, right? So I think VME is like solidly second or third. Like you get a bunch of momentum, all your blocks are perfect blocks, they're all easier, and VME is not unique, so you can build two of it and not feel stupid. You can build two of it and like get more damage pump. You don't feel stupid for that. But I think condescending explanation is insane. It does cost the momentum and it loses you the resource, similar to Cape of No Return, but it leaves the card in their card pool face down. So they don't get they still have to deal with the progressive. There's cards now that prevent you from making cards leave the card pool. So flipping them looks better than it used to. I don't think there's anything that cancels flip an attack. Maybe Unbreakable is worded to say if it flips one of your cards, but like whatever, no one's playing that card either. So I think flip the attack face down is really strong just because there's so many other things that like care about you making a card leave the card pool. That tiny little difference is enough to matter. And then the other thing I think that's really strong is actually still just Genkai's. Genkai's lets you build into deadlock in that like weird like in between zone, and then if your opponent plays a good deadlock attack, you destroy back down to 10. That like 11 to 13 like danger zone where you're not really strong in deadlock but you do qualify. Basically, Genkai's can help you get out of. It helps you, just overextend and like gamble basically and say, is my opponent going to punish me, and then have like a response for it that you can afford. But in games when games get to a longer game state, right? Like that's where it shines. The form on it super strong with its symbols because we keep printing discard effects, we keep printing hand attack threats. So, and people keep playing their whole hand out and like holding one or two cards and trying to draw random cards. And so I think it's strong like that. So I think condescending being unique means it's not really like its own game plan. So I don't know if that counts. But I think Genkai's is back to being like the big thing. Like it stops one-shot decks. It hurts five-handers. If people are going to play Nick Reagan and you just yeet the first attack, like there's a decent enough chance that they're actually not going to have a second one and they were hoping to draw 2 or 3 cards during it. It goes with keeping alert and disarming glance, so you can like prevent draws during the second attack, and like there's some flexibility. So preventing your opponent from doing all this card draw that we just talked about, I think, is a huge part of the game plan right now. And the best way to do that is to deny the enhanced step.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Genkai's Guidance was definitely the card in the event for me that it's been a while because that's an old card and we like new toys. But
It's
every
like
time
one
I
year
put it into
old.
my deck, I felt like my deck just was better with it. Like
Yeah.
it's a win you the game card in so many different like ways that it's like honestly a bit crazy that people we've forgotten about it because the offensive ability, like you mentioned, is just so strong too, where it's not a dead card. Like
Mhm.
if you draw it on your turn and you slam it, your opponent may just lose the game because you discarded a card out of their hand, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
it's one that I stopped
good.
playing because I
Yeah.
wasn't playing decks that can like refund the cost. But
Yeah.
it was in my sideboard for Rodan because the games where I would really need it, the game would go long enough. And I also didn't think that there would be open fucking deck lists that they would just randomly spring on people. So I thought having no Genkais in the main board and then switching into a heavy amount, like 3 or 4 Genkais, was a good game plan. But that's kind of its own topic, is like what could be done better at events, and not surprising people with open deck list kind of is a big deal, I think.
So for you, is that a content issue or a form issue?
What do you mean by
Meaning, meaning, do you not like that it was open deck lists, or do you not like that they were like surprise open deck lists?
kind of both? I don't think open deck list during Swiss is a big deal because if you plan to make top cuts, then you plan for it to be open deck lists anyways. And it's been explained to me that the goal of open deck lists in Swiss is to extend the idea of open deck lists in top cuts, which is you do not get punished for being on stream. You don't get punished for people scouting your
Mm,
deck. You don't get punished for not having teammates that played against a guy around earlier and went, oh, he's playing all lows, you
I
know?
see.
So, like, creating, I don't know if it's equality or equity. I think it's equity in this case, right? Because you're rising other people up to the level of people who get to watch the streams and stuff. So I would say creating this equity that everyone, kind of gets the same information is because it's equality if no one gets it either, right? And it's just
I,
like we all
I
start
gotta
at the
tell
same
you,
place.
I liked it a lot that there are
Yeah,
open deck lists because it felt like a much more skill intensive game when I know what you're trying to do and I know you're not holding this type of zone and like it made it more of like a chess game than a
right.
Yahtzee. Like I'm gonna try my thing and maybe you'll have a Genkai's Guidance that blindsides me. I don't know. It felt pretty good to me. Like for instance,
If you
I
know that your
identified.
opponent has only 3 referee jury versus 4, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah, like for instance, when I played against Wub in Swiss, he wasn't playing a single low attack. Like that is so important to know. Like
Correct.
that is like
Granted,
he's trying to perhaps like get a like I don't think he's doing it on purpose. I wasn't playing any low attacks either, right? It's like it's not a secret, but when you don't have to hold a low attack, the game becomes a lot different, right? Like a low block rather.
yeah,
The game becomes a lot different, and I think that's a nice, more skill intensive way of playing when it's like I know what you're going to be trying to doing because I've done the homework of knowing what these cards do and looking at how they synergize, right? Versus just going in blind and getting hate fished for my whole life total because I didn't realize you played hate fish.
right.
So to me, it felt like it made it a more skill intensive game. But I agree, the form made no sense that they just sprung on us like, oh yeah, guys, open deck list today, like go crazy. Like I was like, why didn't you tell us that was going to be a thing? Not that I would have prepared for it, but it felt a little weird that they just announced that randomly.
I I definitely think it has to be a known thing because when I say I don't really like it for Swiss, it feels like sweaty, which is kind of the same thing as skill intensive, right? Like it feels like it's this extra work. A lot of people I talked to said they didn't look. They just went, yeah, whatever, man.
It's
I'm
a
not.
huge advantage if you're a person who plays the game a lot and you can figure out just by looking at the list what's going on with the deck, right? It's a huge advantage.
Yeah, well, so for me, it like, I feel like I would psych myself out. You know, I'd be like, oh, they have two of this random action, and I would just always play around it. So, even stuff like that, like when I don't know what to be afraid of, because I listen to people all the time. I'm holding like 2+3 low blocks, and they're like about to play an Armor of the Wolf, and they're like, oh man, you're just gonna run away me. There's no way you don't have it, man. And it's so annoying because I wish I had it. But like, and what's funny is they're almost always gonna play it anyways. They're gonna make me have it anyways, so it's super annoying to
Yeah.
hear. But
Or yeah,
yeah, I'm
personally, I know you didn't like it, but I thought it gave me a bit of an advantage as somebody who like plays the game a lot and like
well. I think it would
yeah,
also give you an advantage if you're playing a defensive deck. If you're
that's
playing a
true.
more
That's
interactive deck where the
yeah.
cards you hold matter more, like it's a buff for those decks. It's a buff for decks that have to block the correct zone. It's
And
not a big deal for Grog because he's going to do the same thing on every attack almost, and like him planning forward in a turn is kind of just which foundations am I going to sacrifice for damage reduction and and or flip for damage reduction and or discard for damage reduction.
I'm still curious what in the finals match, what Justin told me he sided in 3 cards, and I don't know which 3 he sided in, and I'm really curious if it was a runaway or not. I want to know if you're watching, comment. I'm because like that was the like this is the interesting part, right? He told me he sided in 3 cards, and I'm like, I hope it's not runaway. But for him, it might have been like, oh, runaway is useless against Rodan. Like he
Well,
can ignore progressive with some of the cards on top of his deck. The attacks aren't always that
yeah,
big. Like
if you
so it's quite interesting actually, right? When you're playing the game and you have limited information because you see the deck list, but you don't know the actual you know what I mean? Like it's
whe-
quite interesting actually. So
whenever whenever I played Runaway against a combined firepower deck, they always just had firepower on top. And like
that's what I'm
road
saying. So he might have thought that, right? And
yeah,
and to
so
me, I'm like, if he plays Runaway, I don't know how I'm gonna ever kill him.
well
Like
so yeah, Runaway is like I've seen the sideboard for Justin's deck. There's 3 copies of Runaway, so that's like the most obvious answer. But considering your deck, I don't know if I want to say
get bodied by absorbed spirit strike or whatever, the attack that takes a momentum. So it puts like a 1 mod on top of my deck and it gets rid of my momentum. Like
yeah.
absolutely bodies Rodan as well. And when I played Wug, who I'm pretty sure is a teammate of Justin's in Swiss, that's how he beat me in one of the matches in one of the games by doing that 3 times in a row, and I just couldn't. I literally couldn't block anything because it was just -1 speed instead of like
Stop
-3
taking
speed.
momentum, bozo.
Yeah,
Spend it on
exactly,
VME.
right?
Yeah,
So,
so
yeah, I'm
but
really curious what like
what
yeah,
what
so anyways,
what
um,
I would have cited if I was Justin though is I would have cited the fierce wings. He had 2 fierce wings, and your deck is like I'm not gonna say reliant on, but very much likes to start its kill turn with Ice Sword Execution.
oh, yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so if you
yeah.
Ice Sword my foundation and then I fierce wings another one in, like that feels like a very strong play, especially
That's
if
good value. That's
yeah,
good value.
especially if
Yeah.
the card that you're like gonna fierce wings in is actually like a reset. Because I'll tell you, man, I could not play a Senta battle in my testing with Rodan because every motherfucker was playing always cool. And if I could not fierce wings all of the always cool, or not fierce wings, if I couldn't ice sword all of the always cools, it just wouldn't work. And like I played against the Dark Daku deck, and it like sided into fierce wings against ice sword. And I would be like, all right, tap down your always cools, and it's like I'll build 2 more. Like, fuck me, dude.
Oh, man. Funny.
So that's probably what I would have done. I don't think Koenma's task is like a big deal, so those probably come out. Um I mean, removing your
I mean,
stuff is a big deal,
it was
but
pretty cool when he like took out 6 of my attacks. It's like
yeah.
for what it's worth, I thought that was like kind of scary, but it was funny though because I had a barrier shield in my hand, so I was like, "Yeah, here's my deck. Go ahead. Like I'm gonna like use this barrier shield for free when you're done." You know?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny, like playing the Rodan deck and testing and seeing like all the different avenues that people had to like play around it, and then realizing that like these are dead cards in so many matchups where the opponent is just Hanji or Grog, and they're just like, I'm gonna play 6 attacks turn 2. They're all +3 damage, and fuck whatever text you have. Just ignore all the text. We are just speed and damage numbers now. Like, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
That was yeah, that's what I would do against your deck probably if I was him, is um try to go with the Fierce Wings. I guess you don't really have a way to cancel Runaway, do you?
No, you just play through
Yeah, you
it.
just hope that
Yeah, yeah. You
hope
can't
it's
you can't build a
firepower
deck
on
to do
top.
everything. You can't do everything, you gotta pick your battles, and
Yeah. Well, so
that was that was a battle that was picked to lose.
the
Yeah.
way you beat Runaway with the most Rodan decks is you don't pump any damage, then you play Tri Gravity Beam, and you're just like
Yeah,
you.
right.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't want to run away my 4 damage move that's 4 damage, right? You don't want to run away my printed 5 damage move that's still 5. And now I'm gonna play Tri Gravity and see if you're gonna run away the Senda battle.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the answer. Or you just stack combined on top of your deck and
Right.
and say, you sure about that. But yeah, no, so yeah. So interesting that we had kind of different perspectives on the open deck list, but yeah.
Again, I'm for it if we just announce it ahead of time. I also don't
That,
care.
that I didn't get. I'm with you.
I
Yeah.
also just
We're
don't
the
care if
same.
we do it or don't for Swizz. I do think it should be a thing for top cuts, which means you should just have it for everything, right? Because I don't think it should go away for top cuts for exactly what you were talking about, where it's like trying to hold my secret sauce and surprise people is not great. And again, your sauce is going to get ruined by being on stream. Your sauce is going to get ruined by one of the 18 team MGLA members playing against you, and like one of the 18 Let's Talk UVS members playing against you, or
But
like
well,
one of the
I'll tell you in the Atlanta event when I was playing against Jeremy Clad, who was on Toga. He was playing a bunch of Runaways and Genkai's Guidance, and I couldn't wait. I was salivating so hard deciding Koenma's task because I was like, I like that's your
yeah.
defense. Oh my god, like this is gonna be fun.
Yeah,
So
I'm seeing so much more Koenma's task than I ever thought I would, just because it's an action cancel, and like
so
that used to be the
yeah.
worst part about it.
So here's the thing that Richard the Chamber said to me that resonated. He's like, everyone is playing assets and actions now. There's like basically no deck that's just meat and potatoes anymore. Everybody's playing an asset, everybody's playing an action. And it's like pretty much right, other than like the turbo linear Hanji 60 card or Mirko. Even the Mirko card's got a million actions, right? Um, it's like everybody's playing like that's
It's like
good.
Nick
That's good
Reagan's the only
design,
one.
but well, it's like it opens up more like avenues of cancels, right? And like
Yeah.
asset hate and like this pass through walls card that's a two diff that used to do nothing is all of a sudden like, oh, this might be good enough to play in the main board, if not definitely the sideboard. Like Hacker Extraordinaire was maybe the best card this weekend across the board, right? Like the defensive foundation that was the most impactful. Like
I can't
I
believe
mean,
you
it
almost
just
played
shut
zero
down a lot of
hackers.
decks. Yeah, like it's cool that now everybody's playing actions and there's more interaction when that happens, right? So I appreciate that trend and that now you can play those cards that say cancel a asset or cancel an action or so that's a win for a win for design. I would say they printed good enough assets and actions that everybody's playing them.
Yeah, and good enough that people complain about them, like VME and combined firepower, the two most registered assets and actions at a four of.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, look, we could talk about that if you want. Like,
well,
I think the the pain point of VME is if you don't have a way to answer it, it's like insufferable. But
yeah,
it's I don't really like the silver bullety stuff, but like hacker just like absolutely massacres a VME deck, right? It's
yeah,
like
absolutely.
it's like
Like
you
it
probably could
should.
lose that game if they have hacker and you're on VME is your game plan, right? Like so it's funny that there is like this triangle format as you say, or of like there are these silver bullet cards that just like decimate your strategy if you're an assets deck, right? And so I don't particularly like that. I like when it's a little bit like every symbol maybe should have some
Well,
form of an asset hate, right? That
is
would be
Hacker
ideal.
decimating asset decks? Like, if Tarion has like 5 or 6 assets out, how much momentum are you spending on your once per turn ability to flip them and like ruin his strategy? Right?
But the problem isn't that the quantity. The problem is, you probably have a deck built that wants to do X, and one of those 6 assets stops X. And if you deal with that one, you're probably fine, right? And so that's kind of the way I would think about it, right? Like yeah, suited up is like a nice +1 -1, but that doesn't really matter. Like you need to deal with like the VME if you're an all highs deck, or you need to deal with like the cape if you're a combined firepower deck just loading up stats on one big move, and you can't play through Eden Box, right? And so it's like to me, hacker I think is just in couldn't be in a better spot. I can't believe I almost didn't mainboard it because
A
it's
big
like
part of it,
it's a card that can win you games. Honestly, like
I
that's
think I think a big part of it is hackers targeting cards that are almost always unique, and that's always been like
true.
a strong thing. I've always felt like it's weird that we don't have more targeted flip effects that say target a non-unique. Like if you
Yeah.
had a one diff that was like flip a rival non-unique foundation, like apathetic, but like as a 1/5 or 1/4. Like I don't think that'd be too big of a deal because you wouldn't be hitting like the only copy of a card a lot of the
I,
time.
I used to slam the overhaul card. It's like a 1/4 low block that
Flips
says
a
flip
committed.
a committed, deadlock, destroy
Yeah.
one. I used to play like minimum 3 on every evil deck because
Yeah,
it's
but
just
that's because it
good.
was a low block.
True,
That's
but
because that
it
card
is
was a
just
low
like
block.
yeah, that is
But
a good, and that's a card that's not great for this meta, but that is just like a good interaction card. It's like
yeah. So, but yeah, so that's why I think Hacker might overshine. It does also have like 3 things it's doing, right? It generates its own momentum, it's playable while
I'll be a
committed,
card.
it draws you a card at minimum, making it worth like a 2/4, right? Take damage, draw a card, that's like the Grog motto. So like it lets everyone do that. And yeah, I'm just saying I don't view it as a silver bullet. When I think of a silver bullet card, I think of things like disarming glance combo where it's like a
Oh
silver
yeah,
bullet
or
for
like
the
a
whole
baiting
turn.
copy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think universes really print silver bullet cards. I don't think they really ever have, as long as I've been playing. Whenever they try to, they don't do anything at first, and then if someone does figure out something to do with it, they like fucking ban it like immediately.
yeah, yeah.
Like if you have a silver bullet, it turns into a prison like very fast because you just find some way to like lock the game down because you have destroyed their whole strategy, right? But I will say Hacker is in a better place than it's never been better in the format. It's probably better than it was even in Soul Calibur format, because in Soul Calibur format there was just as many ways to destroy Hacker, discard your momentum, or most importantly, you probably weren't taking 5 damage. You were probably taking 25 damage and you didn't want to actually take it to get the momentum. But um playing in retro, there was a surprising amount of like decks that are just gonna put together like 5 mid for 6 into a 5 mid for 6 into like a 6 mid for 7, and they weren't getting like super crazy. And if they were getting super crazy, I could just revoke it, which is super sick. Reprint,
Or
revoke. That card is tight as fuck. I don't give a shit that it's zero
so
diff and
that
cancels
makes the
characters.
character or
Fuck you.
kills
You
the
should just
character.
lose to it sometimes.
Is that the one? What does it do again?
It's a zero diff that cancels any enhance and then removes itself
Oh,
from the game immediately.
so it cancels the character ability. That's what it
Yeah, and
does. Yeah.
it's zero difficulty, so it's
Speaking of which, how
about
do we
free.
feel about AGB, the aerial goblin bolt?
I love that card. That card is sick. Characters should not be sacred. You should be able to lose to interaction at like any point. Aerial Goblin Bolt even says like you can't do it at the start of a turn. It doesn't sit in the stage. It clogs your hand. If you're Devil Jin and you add it to your card pool, cool, you're a 5-hander. You know, like you needed something to add to your card pool to make your character work. It does get a little oppressive in Devil Jin when you start stacking them, and it can be a blowout when. So one thing I noticed is that like critical role characters commit more than previously. So it is very difficult. I mean, most of them are playable while committed for their other ability that's also once per turn. So characters that commit and have once per turns get hit way harder by these cancels. But at the same time, I feel like characters should have always been committing, and then we wouldn't be so thirsty for a character cancel, if that makes sense.
I think it's a real cost to play that card, so I don't mind it because it is a
Yeah,
super
it's a
wimpy
3 check
attack.
that does 3 damage.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's actually pretty well designed. It's like I'm happy to see a defensive piece be printed that's powerful because I've been complaining, at least in my own circles, that every set we get these crazy offensive cards and we'll get like maybe one pretty good defensive card and it's out of whack. So it's nice to see Nonagon and this card get printed that actually like
It's cool.
matter.
Aerial Gamma Bolt is, I think, as strong offensively as defensively, maybe more so. I think Goblin Bolt is
It's
better
strong
as an
late game
offensive card.
offensively, but you're not like doing much if you're poke turn 2 with aerial.
Yeah, it can't do a lot by itself, but on
Yeah.
offense, it also seals a foundation and cancels an enhance. So I think that that's pretty cool.
It's a good late game card, which is like the definition of I think what most people how most people want to play the game is like there should be an inevitability so we don't go to turn 24, right? And
Right.
there should be pieces, right? Like so I think it's well designed because it's like it's really good as like an opener and your 4 to 5 attack string. But it
Yeah.
sucks, as a poke. It's terrible. It's a waste of a card. It's probably the worst poke, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
take like
The only good thing about
whatever.
the only good thing
Yeah.
about it as a poke is people are likely to take damage from it because it's only 3, and
Yeah.
it like seals the thing your rival might do. So like one of the hardest things
That's
about
like draft.
balancing.
That's like draft or pre-release value though. Like you're like playing a random attack and hitting them for 3 and taking a momentum. Like that's not good. That's not like great value, right? It's like
No, I think it's good enough value when you've got cards like Condescending that need momentum, when you've got VME that like, because what it is they're gonna take the 3 damage and then you're gonna build VME after it and they're gonna regret taking
right.
3 damage, right?
So
But it's
I
not the
was
end of the
playing.
world because it wasn't 6 damage plus a free momentum plus it dealt 6 damage and now you get a second momentum. Then you build VME. That's a fucking house.
I was playing 2 condescendings, and I think I used it once, maybe twice the whole event. Like people were
Yeah.
sniping it. People were sniping it. Like there's a lot, and I like that people were sniping it because that means there's interaction, right?
Right.
Like I don't just like put them in jail with condescending if I can't block something or I don't want to. But yeah, like it was not a card that was easy to use during the event. Like it was
Right.
getting sealed or committed nonstop or flipped. Like yeah. So, and anyways, I really, I think we're on the same page. It's a really cool card with a super high skill ceiling and interaction, and you got to think about what you're going to cancel. And so,
And
yeah, that's
again,
cool.
Aerial Goblin Bolt specifically has to make it into the card pool which means if you're not playing mid attacks, your opponent probably has to like rezone it or take half damage, which is its own issue. And then it's in the card pool and you know it's coming. Unlike Revoke, which is a hand trap where it's like, oh, I hope you don't have it or I lose. Like,
Yeah,
Aerial
feels
Goblin Bolt's
bad.
way more fair than Revoke, but we could also just reprint Revoke. Just as is. Just have Revoke.
Yeah, I think the Devil Jin deck is definitely cool and good, but you're still playing like a 5-hander, and I when you don't draw like 4 attacks, which is not easy to do, like if your opponent just like you get hard punished by the decks that block when you play Devil Jin, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Like they have to have the right
Yeah,
zone because Devil Jin like rezones and stuff on his own, right?
true.
But
True.
the Devil Jin decks have a lot of random factors, and to reduce randomness, they're playing 3 damage and like 2 speed moves. Like Camouflage Counter is like a bitch move. It's a 2 speed low, Like I do not fear the Devil Jin deck that is trying to kill me with a million camouflage counters and stacks
Mm.
them on top of the deck during my turn because I dealt damage to them. I fear the Devil Jin deck that is down to just play 5 diffs and check them all because the one time it will check bad, it will not check bad because it's Devil Jin.
Mm.
That's the Devil Jin
Yeah.
deck I'm afraid of. The one that wants to spam Goblin Bolts on my turn doesn't scare me. The one that wants to rezone things and block with Unyielding Heat is the one that scares me.
Yeah, I would say like if you're playing Devil Jin like low floor, like you're gonna do well because that's just like really well positioned
Just
character. But
buckets of
like
damage, right?
yeah, like for you to top cut with that character, you need to like be an insane player. Like that
Yeah.
is you have
Or
to be
insanely
like one of
lucky.
the best players. Yeah. So I like that Devil Jin's kind of a thing because it's like he's gonna stomp you if you don't have like a real game plan and you're super linear and it's easy to tell what to cancel. But if your deck's doing a lot of things, they're gonna cancel the wrong thing most of the time. So it's like
Yeah.
yeah, like
Devil
I
Jin's
played
cool
it.
because
I
he's
played Devil Jin, and it was like it was very funny. The guy, it was Sebastian, super cool guy,
yeah, we love
and I
Sebastian.
I
Bird mentioned.
unironically told him, I said, look, like you're a nice guy. I think you should just go to the next game because you missed your window. Like
Yeah.
I'm never not gonna have the block. Like and he refused because he was like, my friends are like they say I like never give up or whatever. And that was totally fine. We had a good time, but like I just killed him slowly because he was doing the goblin bolt thing. So I couldn't like do anything too crazy. So it's like, all right, I'm just gonna poke and then build 2 and hold 4 cards or 5 cards and like you're never gonna hit me and we'll just keep doing this until you're dead. You know?
It's funny. I played Sebastian with my Rodan deck like the day before the event. And that was one of the matches where I was like, maybe I should play Grog because I won the matches, but they were like harder than they should have been. Like, no
Yeah.
offense to
Yeah.
Sebastian, but I was like, damn, bro, it should not be this hard for me to like wax a 5-hander. So like he had sauce, but again, I won the matches. I just was like trying too hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So like that character just can't deal with like somebody who's going to be able to
Dane
block.
block.
Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't do anything. So,
Well, it's like
anyways,
Devil Jin gives up a bunch of momentum, and then like one of the strongest things he does is he has like a little miniature Mirio bullshit mini game where he can like send everything as a low, and then you play VME and you get a bunch of momentum, and it just completely counteracts it, right?
ruins it. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's a 5-hander who's gonna face tank, and you just get like 3 momentum, and you don't press any buttons because Goblin Bolt is there, so you just raw value momentum, and then on his turn, he has to add Goblin Bolt to cancel the VME. So you just hold high blocks, and if he doesn't add Goblin Bolt, then you change it to a high. If he does add Goblin Bolt, you're already holding highs, right?
But
Like
I will say the first time I played against that deck, I got absolutely massacred. So like if you're a person who didn't know about that deck and you just like showed up and you played Sebastian, you probably got absolutely ruined.
he got like 11th place. Yeah, he would have
Yeah,
top
that's what I'm
16.
saying. Like most people probably hadn't seen this combo and like just
Yeah.
got absolutely ruined. because they didn't
Yeah.
know, like they were just playing their game, which is like, oh, I'm gonna like play 4 attacks, and the fourth one's gonna be really cool and do all this, stats, and that deck's just not gonna let you do your thing, man.
That
So
his deck was a deck with Vast Hybrid Chimera Kraken and buckets of damage. Like I had all the faith that that deck could top cut. So he ended. If it was
yeah.
top 16, he would have been in there, right?
What else? What else we got to cover, Sam?
Well, let's just talk about the event overall for you because I'm sure you talked about it in like your post-win interview about like what was your hardest matchup and why you picked Rodan. I know the questions Barrett Bryant likes to ask, so that they'll probably be re-uploaded on Uncanny Girls YouTube because they don't like to upload VODs for some reason with UVS. So I'm waiting for the event VOD to be put up on an independent YouTube channel.
Sure.
But while we're waiting, what was like the weekend like for you? Like hanging out at the hotel? Did you play any side
Oh yeah,
events? Did the event run smoothly in between rounds?
yeah. I was staying with TC and his locals. They were a cool group, super nice. It was a lot of fun. We had an Airbnb like 10 minutes away. It was a great setup.
Okay.
So that was a lot of fun. It was like they were all jamming games and playing Wii and or Switch rather, and like there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So that's like the way, if you can like get a good group together. Like it's much more fun than being at the hotel because I've been at the hotel every time until this event, and the event before Orlando Worlds was the event that I hung out like after day 2 of Worlds. I went back to the like Let's Talk UVS Airbnb before I joined the team, and it was the most fun I've had at like a UVS event. Part of the reason I joined the team was that night was just like so fun. So like if I highly recommend people, if like you will elevate your experience by so much if you do the Airbnb thing with friends. Like it's just a better experience than the hotel. But anyways, taking that aside, so I thought the event, like Sean O'Brien is world class at these events. This guy knows how to run them. I think back to when I first started playing Universes, and we used to have 20-minute breaks between rounds for God knows whose reason, and we'd have a random lunch break between round 2 and round 3 in a 9
Dude,
round event.
the early lunch breaks killed me. Can I just say I'm a fan of the lunch break? I think breaking the event up is not terrible if we've got the time. If it's like 7 or less rounds, I would like one, like even a 30-minute break, but it always ends up being kind of unfair to people who end up going into overtime. And two, it's not super necessary, but I do think a little lunch break is cool. But I have no clue why we had 20 minutes between every round for like the first 2 years.
Yeah, it was unacceptable. Sean O'Brien got rid of that real quick, so shout out to him. I will say one really funny thing is that I have been random deck checked 6 events in a row. And so I'm like complaining to them, I'm like, can I get like on the pre-check list
Can I
so
get
that when my
TSA
name
pre-check?
comes up, I was like, you've now random deck checked me 6 times. I passed all 6. I'm not doing anything funny. We don't need to keep deck
It's
checking me.
random, bro. It's random.
It's random, but I get picked 6 times in a row, so it's not random. Like statistically speaking,
It
right? Like
is
if it was
random.
random, I wouldn't.
What, you're
So
saying
anyway,
somebody
like,
can't do something 6 times in a row without it being
it's a little suspicious,
it's a little
guys.
suspicious? Yeah, okay, it's suspicious. Um
and they were laughing when I got picked because they knew, they were like, "Oh, this guy always gets picked."
this guy
Like,
always gets
and
deck checked. Well, what's funny is it's like the Nick Reagan players like to get deck checked. The people who play 100 card decks, like TC and like Christos and the Panos brothers. Like I bet they like getting deck checked with like their 100 plus
it's
card
pretty
decks.
funny.
I know.
Yeah.
So the character that Nick Reagan is like based off of, right? Eva 2. I used to know people who would bring 120 card Eva decks, and the whole time they're like, I don't care if I win, I just want to get deck checked. And like randomly in round 3, you'd hear someone go, "Woo, hell yeah!" Like as soon as the round starts, and it's just some Eva player getting deck checked.
Yeah, exactly. So other than that, like funny aside, I thought the event, like, again, I don't know why we can't have like the stream set up somewhere, like on a big screen or like an area
Yeah,
for people to watch together. Like, why is this so hard to do? I think,
a
like, I don't know who
projector.
to
Get a
blame.
projector
Like,
on the wall.
yeah, like, has anyone ever been to like a conference where they have like Smash going on or something and it's so hype when everybody's watching together? And
So
like, why is it so hard to do that? Anyways,
no, I know
it was
why we can't
cool.
do it. I know why we can't do it.
Why?
Because the fucking stream game is in the same room. You'd
Yeah,
be
do it
in the
outside of the
same
room.
room.
Do it outside of the room, like
Well, that's my thing. Is like we have the conference hall. We don't have the hallway. Like we rented the conference hall. So all the best events I've been to are the events that are pretty much exclusively Nats and Worlds, and they had the stream table in a different room, usually with all
yeah,
the other qualified players and stuff, right?
yeah.
And then in the main hallway, they had a big ass screen where people could watch the main event or whatever was happening on stream, and usually with speakers, and you can hear what's happening, and like I want
That would
that so
amplify it.
bad for like regionals.
Yeah. It makes it so much more fun when you can do that and like be like
When you can
everybody's there
gather
to
as a
watch
group and
you.
like watch it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like you finish your match and you go over to the watching area and you watch what's going on and it's pretty cool. Like so we need to figure that one out, I think, because it would make the events way better.
The stream
Personally.
game should not be in the same room as the commentators, like bar
Yeah.
none. There should be a way to view what's happening on the stream just for like the purposes of the culture. Like I don't really have a good way to explain it, but like it generates more interest in the event, and it brings more people together. It gives everyone more memories, cuz I was someone who was trying to watch it on my phone, and like
Yeah.
it was a pain in the ass, and I'm like by myself because I didn't register the event, and like no one wants to huddle around my phone and watch the stream game.
Yeah.
We're not hanging out watching universes when we could be. And like I because I know the commentators, I like meandered over there and I like looked over their shoulder so I could like actually watch the stream games, but like I can't react because I don't want them to hear me. I can't talk to these guys, right? So like, and I'm just kind of bugging them. So I didn't do it a lot because I know like having someone just staring over my shoulder or whatever, like not super fun, right? So like, it's just there was no good viewing experience as someone at the venue. And I think that
Yeah.
that's not a high priority, but man, it feels fucking good.
It would be like it would literally make these events so much better. It'd be
Yeah.
so much better, yeah. If
Especially
after you
like,
finish your match, you go watch the stream match with your boys, and it's crazy, right? It's just fun. You're rooting for them, and so. Anyways, other than that, the really positive thing about this event was people were allowed to watch games. It drove me absolutely crazy that the past few events, if you were watching somebody else's game, you were like, oh, warning, or you'll get a game loss if you don't leave the hall. Like it's like, dude, let us watch the games, man. Like I get it's like a
well,
fire hazard or
yeah, it
whatever, but
wasn't
like
because you were watching the games, right? It was other
no, but
issues.
at this event, you were allowed to just watch people's games, and like that's fun to me. Like I go
That's
over
because
and
it
I'm like,
wasn't
oh, let me see
overcrowded.
who's
That's
like
all.
still playing. Like, oh, Barlow's playing against this guy. Like, I want to check this out. This is gonna be a great match, like that's fun to me. Like I don't know if I'm the
Well,
only one who does that, but
that's another
yeah,
reason to have the stream set up, right?
the
That's
stream.
another reason to
Yeah,
just be like, okay, you can
yeah,
watch it somewhere else. And I've been the kind of person where I feel like we should have like multiple cameras set up, and maybe they're not set up like the full stream setup, and maybe you don't commentate all the games. But like if the first stream game ends or in between games, you can just flip cameras, and then that way you can like view more games. Maybe like you have one table
such a
set
good
up for
idea.
side events,
Yeah,
and in between sideboarding, we're just like, let's see what's happening over at retro, and you don't get like a full view of the game, but maybe you see like one turn, and it just
that's
keeps
funny.
things going.
Just for the games that end early too, like just having like a backup would be so fun. Like
Yeah, like
yeah.
we've
Yeah.
moved people once or twice, and we tried to pick people who like we know like aren't gonna really complain or like be like thrown out by it, but they're always like thrown off. You know, they are thrown off a bit. They're
Yeah,
not like full
yeah.
crash out, but like I think one time we got people in between their game 1 and 2 and like a top cuts to like move over to the stream, and they weren't like mean or like sour or nasty, but you could tell that they weren't like happy about it, like having to move all their stuff and like reshuffle and you know sideboard or whatever. Like, so I think just having multiple cameras set up, just even if they're like not perfect, even if they're just like blank commentary, you know, whatever, just to have in the background almost or like cutaways, super good idea if we can. The
Yeah.
main, you know, what's crazy to me that was like consistent through the first couple years, but went away, and it again not a super high priority, but I think every like card game should do this, and we don't do it. Is what was
Tell
one
me.
thing? What was one thing that was missing when you were like playing in the hallway or in the hall? You're in the main event area. You're playing during Swizz, and you're playing like a long game, especially like a long game one. What's the
Timer, clock.
yeah? There's no timer
So
in the
I
room
don't have this
anywhere.
issue because I just keep track of it on my phone. That's why I have this stupid like Magic the Gathering scorekeeper, because it's the only one that lets you use like the iPhone timer and while
Oh,
you are in app, is because yeah, so I have the
okay.
timer on at all times. So for me, I'm not relying on
Oh,
somebody
you're
else's clock.
special.
Yeah.
You're special. Okay. Yeah. So like that's my thing is I
I'm
was
not
like
special.
I
I'm
couldn't
saying
use
like
my
I grew
phone to
up in this
keep
problem. Like I grew up in this problem, so I have a solution, but it's stupid. Like I shouldn't have to use this stupid like random Magic the Gathering
yeah.
life tracker app that I found that lets you do that. Like I should be like, oh, that's how much time's left over there, or like, yeah,
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
it's super frustrating because um it shouldn't matter. You should just be playing the game right like normally, but you are also allowed to know how much time is left, and that is like part of
Oh,
the
it matters.
strategy.
So it matters so much though, because if your
Yeah.
opponent is taking their time and you're down a game, like, dude, you got to know how much time's left, and you got to tell them like, hey, there's 20 minutes left. We're still in game two. You need to hurry up.
I don't realize how much time has gone by, like until it's too late.
Yeah,
Usually, like when I was playing retro, Sean O'Brien was doing a great call out, but they weren't consistent. It wasn't always like
yeah,
every 10 minutes. It wasn't always every 15. And there was one round where the first call out we got, I think, was 25 minutes left, and we were in game one, and I was like, "Oh shit, bro! I thought it was like 20 minutes." Maybe 25, and I was about to like start policing my opponent's rate of play, and then it was
yeah,
like,
exactly.
nah, it's been
Yeah, like,
25, and all of a sudden I'm like, I have to win this game, you know?
yeah,
So,
like my like mental starts going off about this once we get through like 25 minutes in a game. I'm like, okay, if we're still in game one, like we need to hurry up
yeah,
because we're not going to have enough time for three games at this point. Like
you're
we're just
correct.
not.
You
So,
figure it's
yeah.
about 20 minutes per game, right? So,
Yeah, and there's a lot of good people in the community. Like most people, like who I play against, when I start pointing this out, they agree. They're like, "Oh yeah, like let's hurry up," and like because
yeah.
we're on the same page. Like we want to we want it to be either like a 2-0 or a 2-1. We don't want it to be a get timed out and feels bad.
It
Um,
has been, as someone who probably does it more than other people, honestly, like this is probably something I do strategically more than other people. Um, but it has been a long time since I felt like somebody was playing an attack turn just to soak up the time. And again, not that they're slow playing, they're not cheating, they're not doing it maliciously, because again, I do this. But like, there's sometimes where there's 8 minutes left, and you're like, I can play a legitimate string that doesn't have a good chance of winning the game, but if my opponent doesn't play correctly, it will, right? So it forces them to engage just enough that I can play like 5 to 6 attacks, and it takes about 8 minutes. And it's ludicrous to me that I watch tournaments where people play one fucking attack for 12 minutes. And I can count the number of enhances on one hand, you know? And it's like, okay, we're still on a Colossus SWAT. Colossus SWAT has one fucking ability. It generates face downs. And
it's a
we've played
blitz.
this card for 8 minutes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like, it
yeah,
makes no sense the rate of play to me. So, But what I'm saying is like it hasn't happened in a long time, and I think part of it is because people don't have a timer and they have no idea. I've been past like to my turn people with like 1 minute left in games where they absolutely should have just played one more attack, resolved all the abilities of the attack, and like there's nothing I can do. It takes more than 1 minute to do 5 abilities, no matter how many times I say pass, especially if I have abilities where I have to draw a card. God forbid you have to cycle. That's the real timer scam, by the way, is set up a cycle and you're like, sorry, dude, I have to shuffle 6 times. Like, set up the cycle
I don't
right
have
before.
it in me to do that to somebody. I'm gonna be honest. Like, if there's ever like a minute left, I will tell them like, "Hey, like I'm gonna give you another turn." Like,
Yeah,
even like I could do it to you, but like take a turn, give it a shot.
I tell people, I
Yeah.
tell people when I'm timer soaking, like I've told someone like, hey man, I'm not, like I'm putting the card down as I say it. I'm like, hey man, I'm not going to slow play you, but I'm going to play as many cards as I can this turn,
And you know what? I would rather you do that to me because then at least I know what you're doing and I can
and
be
to
mad
just
about
pass, right?
Yeah.
Not to like worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've
Yeah.
told people that and they're like, yeah, I'll pass every enhance unless it's lethal. Right. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's fine, dude.
I can see through. It's so easy to see through the people who are doing what you're doing, like trying to be sneaky, and it's just
Yeah.
like I don't deal with that well. Like I take grave offense to you trying to like soak the clock against me. Like I'm
again,
not shy in telling you that I am not okay with what you're doing, and if you don't stop, I'll call a judge.
If you're soaking the clock and you're doing things as fast as you can, I have no issue with it. If you're soaking it and it's like if you
like,
stop to think,
what attack should I play next? And they have like one attack in hand.
Yeah, no, or like the one that used to always get me is Eraserhead. Eraserheads who have to think about erasing you on every attack are purely time scamming you. There's no excuse. There's no way you will ever convince me that on every fucking attack, you have to consider it for 30 full seconds. That just screams like time scam. So that's the real one because Eraserhead had a response every single attack and it mattered and it was a big deal. And sometimes the worst part was they would take like 20 seconds to decide to erase. They erase on a 4 and then they check a 3 and they're like, well, I have to spend another 30 seconds to figure out if I can even pass the check or should I. And and it's like you took 1 full minute to not even play a card yet, like to not even fully play the card. So I think timers out is a very important thing. If you've got the timer on your phone, or if there's like an official app we can use, that's cool. But you'll remember really quick. You'll remember that at Worlds there was 2 players who used a timer on their phone. It ended up being the wrong timer, and it screwed one of them over pretty bad.
What I was going to say is there should be a guideline that says if your opponent takes longer than X seconds to do an action, call a judge. That should be in the rules because then people would do it. And right now that's not in the rules and it's really awkward when you're policing. It's really awkward to tell your opponent they're slow playing.
Here's the problem is name any time, even hypothetical. It doesn't have to be the real time. Just name a time. Name a time frame.
A time frame?
Yeah, name a time frame with which you would give it. Just whatever it is. 10 seconds, 20, whatever. Just name a time.
Yeah, like I think 30 seconds.
Okay, cool. I'm now taking I'm taking 30
than...
seconds every enhance now. Because it's in the rules. It's in the rules. I'm allowed to do it. And you know why we don't have it in the rules? Because even when it wasn't in the rules, somebody fucking said they were going to do it, which is blatantly cheating, and a judge did nothing about it. And that's why Levi doesn't play the game in tournaments anymore. That's why he doesn't play in online tournaments or any webcam or any community events. And he doesn't play the game because someone did that to him. And if you put it in the rules, they're fucking allowed to do it.
Yeah,
you have to have like a nebulous, reasonable amount, and that will cause the pressure of people because like this is like I'm committed out, all my shit's face down. I have no cards in hand, you know, but I'm allowed to take 30 seconds, you know, like fuck that. You
You're right.
know, like I
Never
have
mind.
one
Doesn't
card in
work.
hand. I'm allowed to take 30
There's
seconds.
always a bad actor, huh? You
They're
gotta have
always,
air.
well, it's just any system, anytime you provide a system for humans, they will push the line. They will toe the line. If you tell people you're allowed to be bad up to this amount, they will be bad up to that amount and say, "What? We agreed this is the amount." So,
This is the amount, yeah.
yeah,
No,
so
that yeah,
that's
like the way that ideally it would work is you have like a once per game where you're like allowed to take like you're allowed to go in the tank once per
yeah,
game,
that's kind of
right?
how I do it too. I'm like, okay, you can't be mad at me if I'm like hard thinking one time, and
Yeah,
especially
like
against
you
people
you
who
get
hard
one
think
time and you
every
got to
turn.
declare you're using it. You're like, hey man, like sorry, I really need a sack for this. This is the whole game for me. Okay, fine, take your time.
My guidelines on slow play, and this is just personal, and I still haven't called a judge on anyone really about it. I have like snitched to a judge afterwards and been like, hey, watch this guy because I think he was slow playing me, but like I never like pulled the trigger in my own game because it's just such a weird
So
nebulous thing.
awkward to do.
But
So yeah,
the three major guidelines I have is if you look at the same zone more than once. If you pick up my discard pile and have to look through it twice before making a decision,
that's
playing a card,
egregious.
playing an
That's
ability,
egregious.
slow play. Get it
Wait, I have
fixed.
one quick caveat before you move on, though. I was getting tripped up when risky encounter was a thing because I would be how many riskies do you have? Like, if you like milled your risky because their combined firepower was on risky symbols, it was like, oh wait, how many riskies do you have now?
But that's
Like
different. I'm saying if it's like your enhance and you say, let me see your discard pile, you look through the discard pile, you put it down, you pick up your hand, and then you say, wait, let me check one more time. Slow play. Quit doing it. You just looked. You don't get to look again. If you count the cards in my deck and then you got to count the cards in my deck or some shit again, slow play. Like if you do the same zone, if you search the same zone twice without making a game action or that zone having cards added to it or whatever, like changing cards, it's slow play. And I got that from Pokemon. That's an official Pokemon rule. If you search a zone twice without like progressing the game state or like it changing, you are slow playing. The other one that I think is really big is if you have no playable abilities in play and your opponent like is bluffing like they have an action, that is okay, but you can't bluff it every fucking enhance. You
yeah,
can't do it
that's
every
fair.
single enhance and go, should I do it now? Should I do it now? Should I do it now? You can stop and think once or twice. You stopping and thinking counts as the bluff. You've already done it. You've already made me consider it. You now have to choose to do it or not. You don't get to bluff it for 30 seconds every enhance. You're allowed to
Yeah,
consider it, but you don't get to spend the 30-second bluff and halt the game. That's another guideline for me. And then the third guideline is at the start of your turn, if you put your fucking hand down and you think
oh
about playing your turn out, and then you pick up your
dude,
hand and you don't play a card and you put it back down and you start looking through discard piles, you're slow playing. That is my
you're
biggest
so
pet peeve. People will take their whole hand and then they'll go, oh, I don't know what to do. And then they'll put it down and they'll put like their head in their hands and they'll think, that's all fine. It's still slow play, but like whatever. You're thinking about it. Then they'll go, let me see your discard pile. And I give them my discard pile and they go through it. Then they go through their discard pile because everyone's discard pile is a second hand now. Then they pick up their hand and then they put it back down and they start looking at my discard pile again or some shit. Stop
that's
it. Just stop
unacceptable.
it. Play your fucking cards.
Yeah.
Look at the cards while you're planning your turn. Like this is if you can't remember what was in my discard pile, then how did you remember what was in your hand? Like it's so
So,
frustrating.
another thing that kind of like I always did it for my opponents, but it kind of like drove me insane was when they would ask me like, "Oh, what cards do you have that draw? What cards do you have that do speed reduction?" And it's like, if I tell you the wrong thing, are you like what? There's no recourse for me, man. It's on you to know what my cards do. Like, don't ask me. like,
Right.
like like don't ask me those questions because if I tell you the wrong thing, it's not on me, and I don't want to be the guy who does that. But like, man, if you ask me, do you have draw? I should just be like, no. Do you have speed reduction? No.
No,
You
so
know, like
that's the thing is there
it's on you
is
to read
no,
my
you
board,
are
right? Like,
obligated. You're obligated to answer correctly because it's both players maintaining the game state at that point. But I do think it is kind of annoying that it's like I have to like tell my opponent what I have. But here's the thing is like if you don't, the game is slower. So the thing is when my opponent
that's
we're talking
true.
about slow play, and if my opponent says, do you have any deadlock? That's faster than them saying, let me read every fucking card in your stage until I find a
True.
deadlock ability, which is what you should do. You should not tell your opponent you're looking for deadlock, but we're trying to speed the game up, right? So
That's fair. That's fair.
it's
Yeah,
the
but
same thing as like
it does
asking, are you at
suggest that I was
11?
insane.
Like if I'm asking, are you in deadlock? Like I can do that myself. But if I make you count while I'm looking at my hand, planning my turn, I'm playing the game faster. That's anti-slow play. So
I agree with you, but it's also silly that like y- you should know what my foundations do, and if you don't, you should read it because
I
it's not my job to
and
teach you how my deck works.
right, I don't think well again, it's one of those things where like they're already looking for it. If the
That's
opponent
why
like asked
I'm
me,
okay with the questions about the discard pile. Like they're like, oh, like have you played any deadlock attacks or like have you how many combined firepowers do you have? Yeah, I don't. We don't need to waste time. Like,
do you have any
sure.
deadlock showing?
Yeah, that's a fine question. But I'm saying
Okay.
when they start asking like, do you have how do you draw or like what speed reduction? It's like, dude, like what am I gonna tell you about the barrier shield in my hand too? Like where does the buck
No,
stop?
but
Right? Like,
I don't
you
know. When I say
like,
like, how many cards do you have that draw cards? That's just me trying to speed the game up. And like, I'm gonna find out. I can read the cards. Like,
yeah.
so I don't know. I get what you're saying though.
To me, it's not cool though.
My thing is, I hate it when I look at my opponent's cards and they are like reminded that they have this ability. Like I've gone like, do you have anything that resets speed? Especially because I play webcam and you can't fucking see any of the cards. And I'll be like, do you have anything that reduces speed? And they'll go, no, I don't think I. Oh, I do. And I'm like, fuck, dude, I could have just
Let me
sent
give you an
it.
example that I did, and it costed my opponent. I asked my opponent because I was like almost dead to rights. Not in this event. This was a previous event. I said, "Do you have another attack?" He said yes, and shows me what it is. And I said, "Oh, I can deal with that one." I wasn't trying to scam him. I was trying to scoop, but he showed me like the worst attack in the game, and it was like, all right, I can deal with that. Like,
He showed you
that's not an
Mr.
attack.
Brave Slash.
What'd you say?
He
Yeah,
showed
yeah.
you hair raising slash, the Mr. Brave attack.
He showed me like a throw that was 2 speed, and I had like a faith shield or something in my
You're
hand. And I
like
was like, "Oh, that's the
Aaron's.
one card I can deal with." I was
Okay.
like, "Yeah." It was like, so it was like, dude, like, don't tell, like, just tell, like, you're giving, like, don't appease me, like,
Yeah,
make
yeah.
make, like, unless I'm telling you, like, I will scoop if you show me an attack. Don't show me an attack. Like, tell me,
Well,
like,
you were implying that you
hey,
were gonna scoop.
but he showed me an attack, and it was one that I could deal with. Right? It's not on me to scoop. I didn't say I was going to. This is what I'm saying. This shouldn't be a part of the game.
Well, then stop. Well, this
Right?
feels like you created this scenario. So, but
No,
that's
that's what I'm
that's the
saying.
reason.
But people were asking me these questions, and I'm like, dude, I've been on the other side of that, and like
Correct.
sometimes it gets weird.
Sometimes I just check bad, especially if I have like twos or ones. Like people don't expect me to check a one, and it's like I play like a singleton one card, like one check, like a lot of times in retro, right? So I don't know. Like
Yeah,
I
my
have
my my
only
point is,
recently.
though, like you shouldn't ask your opponent these questions unless it's like seriously, like you preface it with like, I don't want to go through your discard pile. Tell me this, or like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because like
I only play
really,
that game
like
now. I only play like the show me game if like they can't fail any checks regardless. Like you
it's
already have to have
it
me
is a
like
bit
one
like,
attack
yeah.
dead. So
It it's I don't think it's helpful unless it's prefaced with, like I will scoop if you show me another attack. Then it's like, okay, there's no ambiguity. But like
Right.
me not realizing you played a 2 speed move that I could deal with, like, oh, I'm not gonna like give you the win, dude. Like I can deal with that. Like, So anyways, that's kind of like an interesting spot in the game where I think like if somebody asks you, you should do your best, but like you should probably just tell your opponent, like, hey man, just look at my board. Like I don't want to say the wrong thing.
It reminds me of the last time I was playing Paper Magic. I was playing at like not an FNM, but just like a local casual meetup, right? So it's even like more casual than FNM. And I was playing like there's like a Chandra Planeswalker Elementals deck, right? And to make a long story short, it's a deck where like when you play an elemental, it triggers like a million things happening, and like you draw a card, you get a land, you ramp a resource, you like do all this stuff, but it's a bunch of 1/1 creatures. And I forget they asked me like if you have like one of the three Chandras, I'll scoop to it, or whatever. And I was at like 4 land. The Chandra costs 6. I have the elemental that ramps me land in play. And I showed him the Chandra and he scooped. And then I looked at the next 3 cards. None of them were land. And I was not going to hit. Like I was not playing this card for like 4 fucking turns at least.
Yeah.
So he scooped to a card that was never going to kill
exactly.
him, but I had 7 cards in hand on turn 3 with 4 lands in play, and the guy didn't want to play it out because that one was super
Yeah.
casual. But like, it's stuff like that where I'm like, yeah, man, I can show you a card I can't play that will win me the game, but like, I can't play it. So like, I
Yeah.
hate shit like that.
Just to set the record straight, totally fine with you saying, hey, I'll scoop if you show me this. Like I can't deal with it. But if you don't preface with that and you ask your opponent something, you put your opponent in a really bad spot a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's true. If they're not offering you anything for the information, you
Yeah.
obviously shouldn't give it.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, and it's weird to not give your opponent the information, but yeah, like yeah. So, anyways,
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's I always hate little stuff like that. I try to play like as rigidly and by the rules as possible because I don't like when things that are fuzzy and like gray areas like determine games. But I also think that it's good because I like things that I guess people might consider fuzzy or gray, like the pen trick. That's probably the most infamous one if you know what that is.
what is it?
So the pen trick is very subtle. It's not even really a trick. But like, like when you're like tapped out, you're kind of defenseless, and maybe you have like a Genkai's in hand, but you don't look at your hand. You just have a pen and you're acting like you're gonna mark down the damage you take. And it's way
Oh,
more common in games that have like a combat step with like where everything attacks at once, or like
oh,
like
that's savage.
Yu-Gi-Oh, where you're like waiting for a declared attack, right? And you're just acting like it's gonna go through. You haven't said anything. The pen trick, you're not saying how much damage do I take, because that is a tacit agreement. You might say how much damage is it total, which is not the same thing. But a true pen trick, I think, is nonverbal. And your opponent says, oh wait, before you send that, I'm gonna sugar rush, or like they think you're taking it and they start to do a bunch of stuff, and then it's like, okay, well, you just enhanced. I'll enhance referee jury. You put the pen down and then we jury it, right? So like,
That's pretty hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing where phone apps are nice for that, because like it's pretty hard to do the pen trick with a phone app. It's possible
I
still,
mean,
you
you
like
could do
hover
it.
over
You
the
could be like,
button, but
how much is it?
yeah,
And then be like, oh wait, I got
wait a
jury. I
minute,
forgot.
yeah. So I'm okay with stuff like that because there's bluffing elements and you didn't explicitly lie. You didn't say anything. You weren't even necessarily like wrong
I
to
respect
think.
that. If my opponent hits me with that, I respect it. That's on me for
Yeah.
fun.
Well,
But
and it's
last
like
thing I want to say
really
on
quick, really
that
quick,
though.
really quick with the pen trick, really quick. It's very, very, very true that maybe if it's 8 damage, I take it. And if it's 12 damage, maybe now I jury. Like that's a very valid
Yeah,
comparison, right? So like
yeah.
I will take this if you don't commit all your resources, but as soon as you start blowing up your stage to pump it, like now I want to do something. So like I think the pen trick also lives in a place where like you are playing the game in a valid way to begin with.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, last thing I kind of want to share that this is a new thing for me is like the bluffing in universes. It doesn't come up a lot, but man, is it cool when somebody does it. Like,
It's
I'll give you
hard,
an
yeah.
example. I'll give you an example. So, I was playing against Richard at locals, and he was playing Mitch, and he VMEs to make it a high. And so I assume that means he has high blocks. He doesn't have the other zones, and so we're playing that game, and three attacks later, I realized this fucker doesn't have a high block. He
Yeah.
completely he got me right, and then from that moment, I was looking for it all day in the World's tournament, and nobody really bluffed, and there were opportunities to do it. And it could have won games. Like you can win games by bluffing when your opponent also has like a zone change or something like that. Like or like if for instance, like even if you don't have the right block zone and you throw down like a barrier shield or something crazy like that, they're gonna park the brakes,
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's subtle things you can do in this game that are extremely like win the game value bluffs.
That
And
is
I would love to advance my game to a state where I'm doing it, and I don't think I'm there yet, but like when you see somebody do it, it's the coolest part of this game.
it's very difficult because people have been trained to just make you have it anyways. It's difficult with like VME because it requires your opponent to invest a resource back that sometimes they're just not willing to. And they're just okay with it getting blocked or whatever. And yeah, it is rare, but it's most commonly done with speed reduction, and it's most commonly done with zone changing. During the fucking Mirio Wars, like it was such a pain in the ass to be like, okay, I have a high block, he can change the zone twice, and I have a cooperation offer, and it's a mid attack. So I have to like bluff him into picking not low. Like it's so stupid, but like, yeah, barrier shield into no block has saved me like 3 or 4 times. Not
That is
often,
such a cool play, right?
and
Like
and and it's cool. And this is the core issue I have with the game, where everything being free sucks. Everything being free sucks because there's no reason not to dump all your damage anyways. If your damage pump is all free and it's all repeatable, I can't bluff you with barrier shield. You'll just add the damage anyways. You know what I mean? If you have to spend
for sure.
resources like VME, if you have to spend powerful, I can like dissuade you from doing it. And even then, half the time, more than half the time, my opponents are like, all powerful, maybe you partial block. And I'm like, fuck out of here,
Yeah.
man. Like, yeah.
That is to me though that like at the highest levels of gameplay, like when you see it happen, it is the most like rewarding. I have never done it, but I've
Correct,
seen other
yeah.
people do it. And man, that is like the chef's kiss of this game. It's
We
when you
call
bluff your opponent with some crazy move like that, right? And so I think you could do it, Sam. Like I'm sure you've done it to people.
a handful, a
And I
handful.
hope I get to a spot where I can one day.
I've done it with like barrier shields and resets a couple times. Um, I've done the inverse where I did an invincible body, and then they did like a Schmillion. They did like all their fire powers, and then I blocked with a showdown. And I was always gonna block with the showdown. I just wanted them to
You
use.
invincible bodied and then blocked with a showdown. Yeah,
Yeah, I just
it's like
wanted them to like use their fire powers on the attack that I knew I had the block for, and just hope that the base damage moves of everything else didn't kill me.
see
You
that's
know?
chef's kiss. That's
Yeah,
that's literally like the best
because
part of the game.
because
Yeah.
I invincible bodied like a 10 damage move down to 0, and then they played 4 fire powers and put it to 21. So like I just needed this like Science Bros era. Like I just needed them to not have fire powers for every other attack, because every other attack I was basically relying on like weapon clash to just keep me alive.
Sure.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it that one's sort of a bluff, but like a lot of times they're not really bluffs. They're just like a really strange line of plays that you have to make that your opponent can't see. So but I agree, that's like, I call that the game beyond. That's like the game beyond the game.
Yeah. It was like anytime my opponent had VME, the game was on, and whether they played or not, nobody played the game with me. Nobody tried to bluff. They always just played optimally, and I could play around you playing optimally pretty well.
Correct. Well, that's where bluffing
Yeah,
comes into play, right? The whole point of bluffing is like you don't
yeah.
have the optimal play and you have to make a scenario where it is. So it's
Exactly
tough.
my point. Yeah, like if you didn't play optimally against me and you had VME, you probably would have, taken some more points or whatever,
It
like
it's
yeah.
almost like people are expecting you to bluff so much that they refuse to like play the game like beyond and just actually play optimally always. Like they just refuse to get bungled up in it.
Imagine you're playing a game and you have open deck lists and you see your opponent doesn't play many high blocks, but they're playing showdown and they VME make it a high. You're immediately gonna jump on. Oh, they have showdown. Okay, what do I have against showdown? Right, like
Right.
So
Well,
that came up a couple times, and I never got showdown. Let me put it that way.
the other
It
thing
wasn't. It
is
wasn't happening. Like if I knew you were gonna try to showdown, it wasn't letting it happen.
yeah. The
Yeah.
other thing is like once you do the bluff, you've given up like you said like in that other example like once you do the barrier shield and then you don't block, like they just know. Like you gave up so much information. So when and where you bluff is also like super crucial. And usually by the time a bluff is like worthwhile or like it could work, it's too late because it's already like the base damage is lethal or whatever. Once your
Yeah.
opponent can't get anything from the information that you're bluffing them, they've already like succeeded so much usually.
Yeah. So all you guys playing VME, if your opponent has a zone change, think about this. Think about
You're
this bluff. Yeah,
just
you
trying to
will
get
win
free
games
wins
by
from
picking the
people.
wrong zone
You're
on
just trying to get
purpose.
free wins from calling people's bluffs now, and I love it.
No, I'm
You're just
not.
trying to set people up to bluff you and fail. Okay, I see
I
you.
promise I'm not.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up, man. We've been at it for almost 2 hours. I've had a lot of fun. Like I said, if you guys check out the replay on Uncanny Girls YouTube, I'm sure they'll have the re-upload of Denver, and you can catch this man's winner interview where he'll probably talk about the deck a bit more, than we did tonight. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on the event, how you had fun. You stayed at the Airbnb, had a great time. The rounds were quick. Sean O'Brien ran an excellent event. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Any shout outs you want to give? Are we going to see you in Albuquerque maybe? Are you going to start your own YouTube channel?
Yeah.
It's
I'll
very
give
in
some.
style to start your own content farm these
Yeah,
days.
I'll give some shout outs again. Like I gave a bunch, but shout out to you for the help with cooking on my deck. It was not
I took more
not a
from
one
you than you
man.
did from me. Someone lied and said you were playing my deck. That is not true. I used your shell. I just added like really specific like interactions that are bad against most decks, but like good. Like for example, I don't think you played Where's Your Smile now, right?
No, I didn't. No, but
Probably.
I'll never forget when for Atlanta, when after the event you were like, dude, why weren't you mainboarding Genkai's guidance? And I was like, I don't know, man. I didn't think of it. And you were like, and I was like, from that moment, I was like, I need to talk to Sam before these events because he has the forethought of what the top tables look like and what you need to come prepared. So shout out to you. Yeah, shout out to Richard the Chamber. That guy always helps me cook. He's always like he's like my sensei, in the background. Like he doesn't make content anymore, go to any events, but man, he's good at the game.
He's not a
And
doer, but he is a teacher.
yeah, he's the sensei basically, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, look, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you, and thanks for having me, Sam.
Yeah. Are you planning to go to Albuquerque or are you going to play in like the David
Oh, so
Toombs webcam
I
event of
kind of want to
unknown
go
origin?
to. So here's the dilemma. I'll share with you. Get your thoughts. Like, I kind of want to go, to just because it's fun to go to these things, man. It's a lot of fun, and I'm conflicted though because I would feel terrible if I went to Albuquerque and like Top Cut. And because I don't want to take somebody's spot in Worlds. I already got my day two spot. Like so this puts me in the position of I can pull a Tim Keefe and play Sam or chronostasis, and I don't like playing those characters. I looked through
I like
UVS
playing
Ultra and I was like,
broken shit like Rodan.
yeah, like I was like, maybe I could play Shigaraki 3. That seems fun. And I was like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Well,
Like,
a lot of people might not want to hear this, and maybe even some of your own teammates, but part of being on a team, theoretically, you don't have to view it this way, but historically, part of being on a card game team is so you can go take wins from other people and then scoop to your teammates and give them better records. That's the truth. That's just the truth. It's been a thing. I've heard many winners interviews after an event where a guy's like, "Oh yeah, I just wanted my top 8 points and I just wanted my Grand Prix or my Pro Tour qualifiers, and luckily me and my teammate who's already qualified were undefeated and they scooped me in, and then I managed to like win through the whole event or ran into another teammate, like we ID'd and then they scooped and then blah blah blah." So like hypothetically that is part of being on a team, but we've just never really had that environment before where like a teammate truly doesn't need to top this event. Like it's happened once or twice with like how qualifying for Worlds has been, where it's like I don't need my invite, but those teammates don't even meet. But that is something to consider, is you can help your team out.
yeah, look, like I've been pushing the team to play, like I'm like, guys, I think there's really like 3 to 5 decks, and if you want to play your own deck and you don't care about winning, don't listen, you do
Yeah.
your thing. But if
Do
you
what
want
you
to
want,
win,
yeah.
like you really, and I'm trying to push on this like concept of like, I think MGLA does a really nice job of like playing like 2 or 3 decks, and I think all of the teams should just be doing that. Like you guys should identify like, here's like the 2 or 3 decks, pick it, make your few changes, and ship it, right? But anyways, back to your point. Yeah, so like I don't know what to do yet. I want to go to the event, but I don't want to do well at the event, and I'm not sure if how to do that. Like I don't know how to play a bad character and have a good time. So I'm maybe I'll do what you suggested and play a good character and just scoop if I can play a teammate or something. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm truly
Embrace the
looking
villainy
for
and
advice.
win the
Yeah.
event and be like, that's it, I'm taking all the points. The less people that qualify for day 2, the easier your time at Worlds will be. You have
I
an
could just be the
obligation.
villain, right?
You have an obligation to yourself to deny other people their invites, because it's better for you this way.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. Just be the villain and just gatekeep.
Gaslight, girl boss, gatekeeper, whatever the quote is.
But yeah, I like the idea that like you and I talked about after the event of like, if we would have played each other with the same kind of like list more or less, like maybe we would have ID'd and like and been like, yeah. So I kind of
If
like
it's
that
like
idea
final
too.
round, I'm certainly not trying to play the Rodan mirror, which is almost definitely a tie anyways, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, well, maybe not. The Rodan's one of the few where, like, normally when there's like aggro versus or like a wall deck versus a wall deck, those usually end up pretty fast because it's obvious who has the advantage. But Rodan's like the only one where it's like, okay, wait a minute, you can actually just cancel out speed and block forever, and like it's
Yeah.
kind of random who gets the better block mods on top of their discard. So like you're never really safe, and you never really want to act like you're ahead because you might hit a string of -1s and they hit a string of +4s. So,
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah.
but I had 4
Anyways,
barrier
yeah,
shield
so
main board, so I think I win.
we'll have to see, man. I can't make the next one whenever that is. That one's easier for me.
Yeah,
Louisville, I think. But yeah, no. We'll have to see. It'll be a surprise.
awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, my friend. Congratulations once again on not only winning the Denver regional, but being the first player qualified for day 2. And I can't wait to see you at future events. And I know I'm going to see you at Worlds, wherever that is. So thank you again for joining me. You don't have like any socials, you don't make any content, nothing?
No, we don't need to plug anything
All
today.
right. It's been a while since I've not had any kind of plugs. So thank you guys for checking in, and we'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.